everyone, and welcome to the Zoo Crew My Story podcast. My name is Kelly, and I am an alcoholic. Please be sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment on our videos so that YouTube will send them out to alcoholics looking for recovery. Today, we have Melissa sharing their recovery story and experience, strength, and hope with us. They're going to tell us what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Please keep in mind that this will be going on an Alcoholics Anonymous website. So without further ado, I give you Rogue Mel.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Melissa. I'm an alcoholic, and I like to start my meetings by saying that I can't stay sober alone, and I know that alcohol is not going to fix any of the problems that I come across today. This is a one day at a time program, and I'm so grateful to be here. It's a good day to have a good day. I was first introduced to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous back in 2005 or 6. I was a senior in high school and throwing my life away. Um, I come from a long line of alcoholics, drug addicts, people with mental illness, people that have spent large amounts of time in prison. Um, this disease isn't anything that I ever would have wanted for myself, but because of the tools that I've learned in this program and because of this program and the love that I receive here and the understanding, um, it's not something that I am ashamed of anymore today. I've turned all of the obstacles that I've had to overcome. I've turned all of the hardships into something really, really freaking beautiful. And I look forward to sharing that with you. Um, I think the first time I had a sip of alcohol, I was, maybe visiting my dad who had just gotten out of prison. My mom had dumped me there so she could go and hang out with a boyfriend in New Mexico or someplace cool. And he asked me to go grab a beer from the fridge, and I did, and I'm like, "What's that?" My mom and her parents had raised me, and they never had alcohol. They're Southern Baptist, and so he was like, "This is a beer," and he let me have some, and I was like, "Okay," one of the cool kids, right? Um, and then I think later on, I was introduced to alcohol with friends. I always trying to fit in. I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but golly, I have this thing inside of me and I just want to be loved. I just want to be liked. I just want to fit in. And I've put myself into some really bad situations trying to fill that void. And I could go on and on about all the times that I should have been at home doing what teenagers should have been doing, resting, getting ready for tests. Um, but time and time again, I was out there running the streets, ripping and running, getting into trouble. Um, Somehow I managed to make it as a JV captain at my high school, cheerleader. And would you believe it that I showed up, halfway into the school year, drunk as a skunk. And I remember the coach putting me into the car of my ex-boyfriend at the time. His mom was a correctional officer. She came and picked me up and took me home and helped me sober up before she took me home. Um, and yeah, that just kind of sums up. Like I was just a tornado from the very beginning. Like the alcohol was introduced into my life. Another time I remember waking up in an abandoned house on this really bad side of town. We knew that the house was abandoned, and I think we just went in there to go sleep after drinking all afternoon. We would panhandle outside of liquor stores and get, adults to buy us, malt liquor or whatever we could afford. Um, I'd smoke cigarettes, I'd smoke whatever's being passed around, which eventually ended up coming to bite me in the butt later on when I was introduced to a dry good, that just made me feel so powerful. I felt like I could do anything. Um, you know, I think I went to 20 different high schools in Northern California from the time that I was like in preschool to the time that I finally didn't finish high school. Um, and I was introduced into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous two years after I was supposed to graduate. So I was supposed to graduate '05. My initial sobriety date was 12/17/07. And I ended up, just being tired. I was so tired. I was tired of jails. I was tired of institutions. I was tired of people that were hurting me. And I just wanted, I was tired of all the situations. And really, I was putting myself in those situations. It was me. I can't blame anybody else, and I don't have to play the victim card today. I want to be the victor of my story, and that starts with taking ownership. If I ever wrote a book, I would title the book Girl, Go Home. Girl, go home. I had no business doing any of the things that I was doing. None. I was hanging around with just the worst type of people. Anyways, so introduced to AA in '07. My sponsor, who I still talk to today, she's got 25 years now. Um, she was cleaning. She every Saturday there was a meeting in the small town I grew up in, and she was the coffee person. She would come early, set up the coffee, and she would break down the coffee. And at the end of the meeting, we would talk as we cleaned up the meeting, put the chairs away, and eventually she ended up befriending me and coming and picking me up at my house and taking me to go, do step work, or go to do meetings. And I found that as really valuable at that point in my life. Um, yeah, I was also, not only did I get a nudge from the judge to attend AA meetings, but I also had to do 52 weeks of domestic violence training, where I learned things like I feel XYZ, and when you do XYZ to me, and this is how I want you to act in the future. So lots of I feel statements, learning that it's not just anger that we feel, like that there's a whole bunch of other feelings behind the anger, like we're just exhausted, we're emotionally overwhelmed, we're fearful, we're afraid we're going to get abandoned, or we're scared, or we're sad, right? Because anger isn't just the only, but that seems to be the big one that comes out when we're really worked up. And so I got to do 52 weeks of domestic violence training. Um, did that every Tuesday, went to meetings pretty much 90 and 90, had a little paper slip, got it signed, got some running buddies, some other people in the program, and we would just bounce around and go to meetings in like Oakland, California, and San Francisco, California, and Hayward, and all these cool places. I think on my 21st birthday, I had like a little bit over a year maybe, and I went to a sober AA dance for my 21st birthday. I think it was in Hayward or something like that. And so I got to grow up in these rooms, and I'm really grateful for that. And I think that is really that for the product of a man that served time in Folsom and San Quentin prison, and being the child of a woman with mental illness, and that's wishy-washy. I think growing up in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous with a whole bunch of drunks that have overcome their disease, and became victors instead of victims, and became successful members of society, and came up from the bottom. I think that was the best way to grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to be honest with you. You guys taught me to put my big girl panties on each and every day to suit up and show up. When I say I'm going to be at that service commitment, you bet your ass I'm going to be there. I'm not stealing money from the meeting. Back in the day, we used to have these little envelopes at the end of our seventh tradition, and I had to hang on to the money in between meetings for H&I and for the rent for the meetings, and I had to go and pay that. So it taught me responsibility, right? Taught me that I couldn't skim some money off the top from the seventh tradition. Um, and I started going back to school. I went to a community college in Fremont, California, and every day my sponsor wanted me to call her. So there was like tons of stairs to get up to where the lecture halls were. And I would just call her every morning as I was walking up those stairs and just touch base, like what test I had today, or, how the meeting went the night before. And it really just set me on a really good path for how to be a responsible member in Alcoholics Anonymous, and to change, just change my trajectory. You guys gave me the tools that I needed, by just even listening, just even letting me call you and pick up the phone, and tell you about my life. And that's things that I don't think I would have had I not come to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I talked about going back to school, and I took little bonehead class after bonehead class to get into like the big classes like statistics and you know um, chemistry and stuff like that. It took time. It really did. It took a long time of me just taking community college courses. But by the grace of God, I stand before you today as a um, family nurse practitioner student with like just a couple more months left before I graduate with a master's. And that's not bad for somebody who came into these rooms as a high school dropout and went to 20 different high schools, right? And it doesn't happen overnight, and not everybody's recovery story looks the same. Not everybody, comes into the rooms and goes straight into school. Like sometimes we have to work, right? We have kids, but that's just my story. I stand before you today as a homeowner. I stand before you today as someone whose bills are pretty much paid. Now, don't get me started on my credit cards. I won't talk to you about that. Shopping's a whole nother addiction. But yeah, life is good today. Life is good today. I'm proud of who I am today. I'm not sneaking around sleeping with, married men. I'm not giving alcohol to underage minors today. I have two kiddos, and they don't have any type of lifestyle as what I did when I was their age. And that I think is the best testament, of what sobriety has given me. I want to talk a little bit about um, the fact that I went back out at 9.5 years. I was getting ready to graduate nursing school. I was studying, my tail off. It's pretty brutal. Like you look around on the very first day of nursing school, and like half of the people that are there when you first start are like still there halfway through it, right? And so it's pretty tough. It's pretty competitive. You have to be on your A game. You have to show up, at the hospitals at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and to be ready to do that. And that's kind of hard to do. I had two small kids at the time. I had a 3-year old and I had like a 6-year old, two girls, and their dad worked out of town a lot. And you know what? I I look back and I'm like, how did I do it? But I know how I did it. And that's with the help of my higher power, who I choose to call God. Because I just, I would lay out my clothes the night before, lay out their clothes the night before. And, I'd put them in their car seats and we'd drive in the dark to the babysitter's house, which was a friend that I met at a church. And I took those babies there and she helped put them on the bus to go to school or babysat the smaller one. And I went to the hospital and I did what needed to be done. This program's taught me to roll up my sleeves, to not rest on my laurels, um, and to grind every single day, every single day. Um, so I was studying and I decided a lot of the students were going to like this doctor across the street and getting a prescription for study medicine, which is called Vyvanse. And, I look back at that now and I did not ever think that I don't know why I didn't think, but remember I told you I did dry goods that made me feel like I was Superman. And, this kind of just led me. Like, so we talk about the relapse happens before the relapse. And this was something that I was doing and participating in that I look back and realize that this led to my relapse. And hopefully by sharing about it and talking about it openly, nobody else has to make this same mistake. At least nobody that hears this story, right? So I went across the street, got medicine, helped me study. I would sit at Starbucks and I would study for hours. Um, and, then also there was this movement coming out with this health drink. It's called kombucha, which is like this fermented mushroom, right? And everybody was drinking it. It was so good for your gut and your intestines and yada, yada, yada. Well, if you look on the back of the bottle, it says it has 0.08% of alcohol. Well, that is another contributing factor to before the relapse happened, there was the relapse, right? And I'm just going to tell you, this is from experience being around the room since I was a kid. If you see anybody drinking a near beer, anything remotely related to using, That's not a good sign. That's usually an indication that that person is going to go whip back out soon. That's what I've seen just from all the years that I've been sober. And this health drink is one of those items that led to my downfall. So please be aware. And another thing I want to say is that, I consider myself sober, 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 not California sober, not prescription sober. I am sober, sober, sober. If I can't get it at Starbucks, it is not for me. I'm going to repeat that one more time. If this girl can't get it at Starbucks, it is not for me. Um, yeah, life is good today. So I ended up relapsing. And I went on this cruise ship. I remember telling my sponsor multiple times, like, hey, I think I'm okay now. Like I'm an adult. Like I drive a minivan now and I'm not the same kid like I was when I first came here. And she was like, our hats are off to you. We talk about that. If you think you can go out there and drink like a decent human being, then our hats are off to you. But chances are, if you're in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, you are like me and you cannot have a drink. You cannot have a silly cigarette or whatever it is that's out there. Like you just can't. We have to be careful. It's either all or nothing. There's no moderation with us. We're not able to do that. And I'm really grateful that I didn't throw away all the things that I'd built up all those 9.5 years prior. I didn't lose my house. I didn't lose my kids. I didn't get a DUI. I didn't lose my nursing license. But let me tell you what I did do. What I did do is that victim card came out real hot and heavy. The first 4 years that I was a nurse, I changed jobs just about every single year that I was a nurse. It was always them. They were the problem. It was always the culture of that facility I was at, or the boss, or the fact that it was night shift, or the fact that it was this or that. I always had these issues, right? And since I've come back to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous 3 years ago, would you believe I've been at the same job ever since? And not only have I stayed at this job, but like they've promoted me to being like the charge nurse of the ER. They've nominated me twice now for being Nurse of the Year, which it just blows my mind, right? Um, I don't think anybody realizes that, you know, 18, 19 years ago, I could barely get out of bed and like brush my teeth and be a successful member of society without the use of dry goods or alcohol, right? Nobody knows any of that. And that's okay. That's actually a good thing. So when people do roll into my ER that are struggling, I feel like I was placed there to share my story. I've hugged young ladies in my ER that were struggling and crying because they didn't want to pick up anymore. They wanted to change their lives. And I share my stories with the grandparents or the parents that are at the bedside, and they look like they've lost all hope too. But I'm there to tell them that there is hope, and the tools that you will pick up in this program lead to that hope, right? But you actually have to do it. And it's not always easy. It's not. Um, I've had the privilege of taking some women through the steps this time around that I've been back in the program. And some people might not like me to say this, but I really don't feel like it's the same on the same level. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's beautiful. It's beautiful when it works. I mean, I've been to tears, moved to tears from taking women through the steps, but there's something about being able to sit across a coffee shop with a sponsor and hug them, after dropping a fourth and fifth. There's something about it. There's something about it, them showing up to your baby shower and it's a beautiful thing, but also virtual. If that works, then that works too. I've got made some really close connections with women, and I've been really proud of some of the women I've been able to work with. And I'm not perfect at this AA thing. I'm not never gonna be perfect. I'm never gonna hold anybody else to that standard either. We're all sick. We're all just trying to get better one day at a time. Um, I've recently learned that there's areas in my life where um, I can grow. I talked about being out for 5 years. And during that time, me and my ex-husband filed for a divorce. And one of the things that brought me back to AA was that I knew you guys were going to help keep me accountable. You guys were going to help me keep my feet firmly planted on the ground, that I wasn't going to I needed I needed something. I needed a backbone. I needed support. And and I'm so glad that I made the decision to do something good for myself, which I knew had worked in the past. I knew Alcoholics Anonymous was a safe place for me to come. And that first year, 2 years after the divorce was really hard. But I continued to show up to my service commitment. I fit it in with my work schedule, and I ended up going back to school. And so I took like the first 2 years of grad school, I kind of took a back seat of, being of service, but now I'm back in the swing of things because I need it. I need to be of service. I need to work with other women. Um, and here's something that some people might say and some people might disagree with, but I heard this a long time ago and I always like to share it. And that's the women stick with the women and the men stick with the men. And there's important reasons for that. And I think when we step away from that ideology, we get into some slippery, sticky situations. And then we're asking, well, why are we in these slippery, sticky situations, right? Um, and it hurts. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I struggle with relationships. Relationships are hard for me. I've got trauma. I've been hurt. I've put myself into lots of really poor situations, which have led me to, um, have trust issues, and I have fear and abandonment issues and insecurities and all those things. And remember, I told you there's something inside of me that desperately just wants to be loved and accepted. I want to fit in. I want to, I want all those things. And, you know, what I need to fill that with instead of men or drugs or alcohol or people or shopping. What I need to fill that with is a connection with my higher power. And I do that by getting on my knees and praying. I do that by taking a moment and taking a deep breath and, just laying all of my issues right there for him. And I call my higher power God, and trusting that it's going to be okay. Someone mentioned the other day that doing a step three, which is surrendering, sometimes we come across situations where we're just battling it, and we just have to turn it over to our higher power and step three it, right? And someone said step three is like brushing your teeth. You don't just do it like once a month or once a year. No, you do that multiple times a day. And it might be the same thing, right? Like, oh, I already turned that over to him once today. Here I go again. I got to turn it over again. Because relationships can be like that too for me. Um, you know, I, I like today, I like who I am today. I like that I focus on my physical health. I've started exercising again, which I think really helps with, energy and mental health. And I'm practicing medicine, and so I'm learning a lot about, you know, there's a lot of doctors out there that will throw pills at you, depression pills, anxiety pills, sleep pills, pills for your heart, pills for your knees, pills for your toes, pills. And I think a lot of time, I see a lot of people come in that have just so much anxiety and so much stress, and I wish that I could just give them, you know, the peace and understanding that I get from sitting in a room of Alcoholics Anonymous and saying the Lord's Prayer. I wish I could give that to them, but I can't. That's something that only each person can do for themselves. Um, so, I take care of myself today. I exercise. I eat healthy food, or at least I try to. I walk in the sun, I get, some vitamin D, I drink water. Every once in a while I'll drink a Coke Zero with lime and fresh cherries from Sonic. It's my drink. Um, and if I have a couple long shifts in the ER, I might pop a Red Bull. Energy drinks are not healthy, do not recommend. But sometimes the ER is a little bit crazy. What else do? I get good sleep. I prioritize my sleep. Sleep is super important for me. I'm usually in bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Um, Yeah, when I have time off, I do things that make me feel good, like reset my house, doing laundry, washing my sheets, doing the dishes, making sure I have a semi-clean environment around me. Sometimes I garden. I raised chickens today. Not only am I responsible for myself and for these two young ladies that are growing up and my dog, but I now have 9 or 10 chickens that give me delicious, healthy eggs every day. And I get to share that with my colleagues and people that I work with. You know, uh, you know, I've I I'm not a bad person today. I'm a sick person trying to get better. I'm not a perfect person, never will be. Um, and I found grace for myself in these rooms, and I found grace for others in these rooms. Um, I could hold resentments in my heart, but really it doesn't do any good. It makes me sick. It keeps me sick. Um, And sometimes it takes me a little bit to get over something, and I might have to 552 somebody, but once you've done it, and if you don't know, page 552 is in the big book, and it teaches you to pray for somebody, pray for their health, you pray for their wealth, you pray for their spiritual health, their family, their financial health. You pray for them on all aspects. Everything that you would want for yourself, you pray for this person. And once you do it and you see the magic that comes from that, and you feel the weight lifted off your shoulders, it's so easy to do it again. And it doesn't take as long, I don't think, the second and third time you do it. It's much quicker. Um, and yeah, so I don't know if you got anything out of my share today. Just know that if you're struggling with this disease of alcoholism, you can't stop. Nothing is working. Everything's falling apart. Just know that if you put just an inch of what you did into your alcoholism, if you put an inch of that same effort into your recovery, the gift will be astronomical. That's it. That's really all I have to share. Thank you so much. My name is Rogue Mel. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Rogue Mel. I absolutely loved it. I'm sure our members will enjoy listening to it as well. Have a great day and keep trudging the road of happy destiny. And to our subscribers, we hope you enjoyed listening to the story and have subscribed and liked our videos. Please feel free to share our videos along with our website and podcast link. Our website is thezooCrew.org. And the YouTube podcast link, well, you're already on the YouTube channel. So just make sure to like it. Thank you so much. I'm Kelly, and that'll be all.